I stared at my phone, reading the text for the fifth time, still not quite believing it. Sorry, Nina. The budget is tight. You'll have to hold down the fort while we're gone. Keep everything running smoothly. My thumb hovered over the screen, a dozen furious responses flooding my mind. None of them would matter. The team was already boarding their flight to Paris, a trip I had spent the last 4 months meticulously planning down to the color-coordinated folders I'd prepared for each presentation session. Through the glass walls of my office, I could see the empty desks, where just hours ago, everyone had been bustling with excitement, rolling suitcases parked beside their chairs. The champagne toast before they left still left a bitter taste in my mouth. To securing our future, Ellen had declared, raising her plastic cup while making deliberate eye contact with me. We couldn't have gotten this far without every single one of you. Every single one except me, apparently. I set my phone down and opened my laptop, clicking through to the presentation I'd finalized at 2 a.m. last night. 426 slides of market analysis, financial projections, and product roadmaps, all researched, designed, and polished by me over countless late nights and missed weekends. The investor meeting in Paris wasn't just another pitch. Bertrand Investments represented our last real shot at Series B funding. Without it, the company would start cutting more than just travel budgets in the next few months. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Mark, our CEO. Forgot to mention, can you update the Q3 projections in the main deck? Bertrand wanted more detail on user acquisition costs. I laughed, a hollow sound in the empty office. Of course, they needed me to keep working from 5,000 miles away while they enjoyed their Parisian adventure on the company dime. What was I to them, really? The convenient workhorse? The reliable background player? After 3 years of pouring everything into this company, was I still just the assistant who wasn't worth a plane ticket? How had I let myself become so invisible? Hey there, I know this might be a heavy way to start, but thanks for listening to my story. I wish I could say this was fiction or that I'm exaggerating for dramatic effect, but unfortunately, every bit of this happened. Drop a comment if you've ever been overlooked at work. There's something comforting about knowing we're not alone in these experiences. My name is Nina, and 3 years ago, I joined Visionary Tech as an executive assistant to Mark Winters, the charismatic CEO with a gift for storytelling and securing funding. The company had a promising AI analytics platform for retail businesses, but what really sold me was their culture. At least, what I thought was their culture. We're building something together, Mark had said during my interview, leaning forward with that intense focus that made everyone feel like the most important person in the room. Titles are just formalities here. We need people who can grow beyond their job descriptions. I believed him. I had just finished my MBA, but the flashier tech companies weren't impressed by my non-traditional background. 5 years as a logistics manager for a nonprofit before business school. Visionary offered lower pay, but promised equity and growth. Ground floor opportunity, they called it. Within 6 months, I had moved from basic assistant tasks to project management. By the end of my first year, I was handling client implementations and building our operational framework. My title changed to Operations Coordinator, though my salary barely budged. Once we secure serious funding, Mark would remind me during my reviews. We're all making sacrifices now for the big payoff later. The Paris trip was supposed to be that payoff moment. Bertrand Investments had responded enthusiastically to our initial pitch, and after months of back and forth, they'd invited us for final discussions before committing to a €20 million investment. I was the one who first connected with Claude Bertrand's team. During a virtual conference, I'd answered a technical question that impressed their lead analyst. When they reached out for follow-up information, I built the detailed response that led to their interest. For 4 months, I'd been their primary contact, feeding them data, answering questions, and building the relationship. You've got the magic touch with these people, Ellen, our chief marketing officer, had said 3 weeks ago. When we get to Paris, you'll need to work your charm in person. The Paris team was supposed to be Mark, Ellen, our CTO Raj, and me. I'd booked 4 airline tickets, reserved 4 hotel rooms at the Saint-Germain boutique hotel that Claude Bertrand's assistant had recommended. Then came the budget discussion. We need to trim expenses for this trip, Mark announced during our planning meeting last week. The board is watching our burn rate closely. Ellen nodded gravely. What if we cut back to 3 people? My stomach tightened. I knew what was coming. Nina, Mark turned to me, his expression a practiced blend of regret and resolution. You've done amazing work with the Bertrand team already. But for this final push, we need the executives front and center. The technical questions, the high-level strategy, that's Raj's territory. The market positioning is Ellen's domain. And you need to be there as CEO. I finished for him. Exactly, he said, looking relieved that I understood. You're the best at keeping things running here. We can't have everything falling apart while we're gone. I wanted to argue that I had built the entire presentation deck, that I knew the Bertrand team's concerns better than anyone, that I could answer technical questions that would have Raj fumbling for responses. Instead, I nodded and said, "Of course, I understand." Later that day, Ellen stopped by my desk. "I fought for you," she whispered, touching my shoulder. But Mark and Raj thought it would look more professional with just the executive team. More professional. The words stung more than the exclusion itself. I spent the next 3 days finalizing their trip details. I created personalized binders for each team member containing the presentation materials. Background on each Bertrand executive they'd be meeting, talking points tailored to their roles, and a cheat sheet of answers to likely questions. I even included restaurant recommendations and key French phrases. The morning they left, I arrived early to set up the office for a pre-departure briefing. I brought pastries and coffee, reviewed the agenda one last time, and reminded them about the 6-hour time difference. "We'll miss you, Nina," Raj said as they gathered their things. "Keep the home fires burning." Mark was already on his phone, half listening as I reminded him about Claude's interest in our predictive analytics model, the one I had actually built, but was credited to our data team, which was primarily me working with an offshore contractor. Ellen gave me a quick hug. "We'll bring you back something nice from Paris." And then they were gone, rolling their suitcases to the waiting car service I'd arranged, laughing about some joke I couldn't hear. I stood in the empty office, surrounded by the remnants of the breakfast spread, feeling hollow. My phone pinged with a notification. Mark had posted on LinkedIn, "Off to Paris with the dream team to take visionary to the next level. Startup life, dream big." Attached was a photo of the 3 of them at the airport lounge, champagne glasses raised. The dream team, without me. I closed the LinkedIn app and turned to my email. The inbox was already filling with issues only I knew how to resolve. Client questions, server alerts, the usual daily fires that I somehow always ended up handling, despite them not being in my job description. I worked through lunch, deliberately avoiding checking their flight status or thinking about them settling into their first-class seats, another detail I knew because I'd booked the tickets. Instead, I focused on a complex client implementation that had been giving us trouble, the kind of problem that would normally have been escalated to Raj, who would then quietly ask me to fix it anyway. At 6 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Ellen. "Landed safely. Paris is gorgeous. Hotel is perfect. You made a great choice." I stared at the message for a long moment before replying with a thumbs-up emoji. What else could I say? The office felt suffocating suddenly. I packed up my things and headed out, deciding to walk home instead of taking the subway. The summer evening was warm, the streets filled with people enjoying after-work drinks at outdoor cafes. Couples walked hand in hand, groups of friends laughed together. I felt utterly alone. My apartment was silent when I arrived. Since my roommate moved out 2 months ago, I hadn't bothered finding a replacement. The rent stretch was worth the privacy, I'd told myself. Now the empty space just echoed my thoughts back to me. I opened my laptop out of habit, checking my work email one more time. A new message had arrived from Claude Bertrand himself, not his assistant. "Looking forward to meeting the architect behind the operational framework tomorrow. Your implementation strategy is precisely what convinced me your company has the execution capabilities to match the vision." My breath caught. Claude thought he was meeting me tomorrow. No one had told him I wouldn't be there. I stared at the message, my mind racing. Should I respond? Alert Mark? Pretend I hadn't seen it? Before I could decide, another email arrived, this one from Mark to the team, CCing me. "Final prep for tomorrow's meeting. Nina, we need the updated slides by midnight Paris, time 6 p.m. your time. Also, can you double-check that the demo environment is accessible from outside our network? Bertrand's team might want direct access. No mention of Claude's email. Either they hadn't seen it yet, or they were deliberately ignoring it. I checked the time. 7:30 p.m. I'd already missed Mark's deadline for the slides. My finger hovered over Claude's email. One reply from me could clarify everything, could reveal that the person he was expecting to meet, the architect he was impressed by, wasn't even on the trip. Or I could stay quiet, do my job, update the slides, fix the demo environment, hold down the fort, as they'd asked. Be the good, reliable Nina who never made waves. The Nina who would never be in the room where decisions happened. The Nina who would watch from 5,000 miles away as others took credit for her work. Again, I closed my eyes, feeling something shift inside me. 3 years of being overlooked, undervalued, and taken for granted crystallized into a single, clarifying moment of decision. I opened my eyes and began to type a reply to Claude Bertrand. Dear Mr. Bertrand, I began, then deleted it. Too formal. Claude, I typed instead. Thank you for your email. I'm looking forward to our meeting as well. I paused, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. This was the moment. I could either continue being invisible, or I could stand up for myself. 3 years of swallowed frustration tightened in my chest. I should clarify that I won't be at tomorrow's meeting in Paris. I continued typing. Due to budget constraints, only our executive team made the trip. I'll be supporting remotely from our New York office. Simple, factual. No accusations or complaints. Just the truth. I read it over once more, then hit send before I could change my mind. Almost immediately, I felt both relief and panic. What had I just done? My phone rang 15 minutes later. Mark's name flashed on the screen. Nina. What the hell? His voice was tight, controlled anger beneath a veneer of calm. Bertrand just forwarded your email to me. He's asking why you're not here. I just told him the truth, I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. He seemed to be expecting me. You should have come to us first. We could have handled it. Mark's composure was cracking. Now he's questioning whether we're the right partner. I'm sorry to hear that. I wasn't sorry at all. What did you tell him? That we had to make tough budget decisions, but that you'd be available for video consultation if needed. He paused. He's not happy. He specifically mentioned your operational framework as a key reason for his interest. The one you were going to present as the company's innovation? Or were you planning to credit Raj for that too? The line went silent for a moment. That's unfair, Nina. We're a team. No one claims individual ownership of our innovations, except when it's time for promotions or raises or trips to Paris, I said quietly. Look, I don't have time for this right now. We have to salvage this situation. Mark's voice had shifted to problem-solving mode. Can you join a video call with the Bertrand team tomorrow morning? 9 a.m. Paris time, so 3 a.m. your time? 3 in the morning, of course. I'll set my alarm, I said. Good. And Nina? Let's discuss your concerns when we get back. I think there's been a misunderstanding about your role. After he hung up, I sat motionless in my kitchen, processing what had just happened. For the first time in 3 years, I had pushed back, just barely, and already they were scrambling. What would happen if I did more than just send a simple email? My laptop pinged with a new message from Claude Bertrand. Thank you for your honesty, Nina. I find it curious that the person who has been my main contact throughout our discussions and who developed the framework that interested me most isn't considered essential for this meeting. Perhaps you could enlighten me as to why during our video call tomorrow, I couldn't help but smile. Claude Bertrand hadn't built a billion-euro investment firm by being easily manipulated. He recognized value and its absence. The next morning at 2:45 a.m., I made coffee and set up my laptop for the video call. I wore a crisp white button-down, professional but not trying too hard. My apartment's brick wall made for a better background than the sterile office would have. At precisely 3 a.m., the call connected. Claude's distinguished face appeared on screen, silver hair perfectly coiffed, despite the early Paris hour. Behind him sat 3 members of his team, all with tablets and notepads ready. Beside Claude, looking uncomfortable in the ornate hotel conference room, were Mark, Ellen, and Raj. Ah, Nina. Thank you for joining us at such an inconvenient hour, Claude said, his French accent more pronounced in person than it had been in our email exchanges. I insisted we speak with you directly before proceeding further. Happy to help, I replied, noticing Mark's tight smile. Ellen was typing furiously on her phone, probably messaging me on another channel, though I deliberately left my phone in the bedroom. I've reviewed the materials you've developed, Claude continued, particularly the operational framework for scaling the platform. Your implementation strategy addresses precisely the concerns I've had about similar technologies. I'd like you to walk us through how you developed it. For the next 45 minutes, I explained the framework, answering technical questions with an ease that made Raj squirm visibly. When Claude's CTO asked about integration challenges with legacy systems, I pulled up documentation I'd prepared months ago, showing a migration pathway I designed after studying their likely client profiles. Remarkable, Claude said, nodding appreciatively. This level of detail demonstrates true understanding of enterprise implementation challenges. Mark leaned forward. As I mentioned yesterday, Claude, Nina is an integral part of our operations team. While budget constraints prevented her from joining us physically, her contribution to our company's success is valued tremendously. Claude's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Indeed, it seems her contribution is extensive. The conversation shifted to financial projections. Ellen took the lead, presenting slides I'd created with only minor modifications. As she talked about customer acquisition strategies, Claude interrupted. These forecasts, who modeled these scenarios? He asked. Ellen hesitated. It was a collaborative effort. But who built the model itself? The architecture is quite sophisticated. A painful silence followed before Mark cleared his throat. Nina developed the initial model, which our finance team then refined. Claude turned back to me on screen. Nina, your title is Operations Coordinator, correct? Yet you've developed the implementation framework, built the financial models, and from what I gather from our previous communications, managed most of the client onboarding process. Am I understanding your role correctly? I felt all eyes on me. Claude's curious, Mark's warning, Ellen's pleading, Raj's hostile. My official title is Operations Coordinator, I said carefully, but my responsibilities have grown considerably beyond that description. I see, Claude made a note. And has your compensation and equity position grown accordingly? Mark interjected quickly. We're actually in the process of reviewing Nina's position. As a startup, we've all worn multiple hats, but with this next funding round, we'll be formalizing appropriate titles and compensation packages. It was the first I'd heard of any such review. 3 years, and suddenly now they were in the process? Claude didn't seem convinced. In my experience, the people who build and execute are as crucial as those who present and negotiate, often more so. He closed his notebook. I believe I have what I need from this morning's discussion. Nina, thank you for your time, especially given the hour in New York. My team will continue today's meetings with your colleagues, but I'd like to schedule a separate conversation with you tomorrow, if possible. Of course, I replied, ignoring Mark's visible alarm. After the call ended, my phone immediately lit up with texts and calls. I ignored them all and climbed back into bed. For 3 hours, I slept more peacefully than I had in months. When I finally checked my messages around 8 a.m., there were 12 texts from Ellen, 5 from Mark, and surprisingly, 1 from Raj. Ellen, Nina, what was that? Ellen, Mark is furious. Ellen, call me back as soon as possible. Ellen, Bertrand wants to talk to you alone tomorrow. Ellen, please respond. This is serious. Ellen, at least tell us what you're going to say to him. Mark's messages were more direct. Mark, we need to talk now. Mark, you've put the entire deal at risk. Mark, this is not how team players behave. Mark, call me immediately. Raj's single message surprised me. Raj, might be time to negotiate that promotion and equity package for real. You've got leverage. Use it. I smiled at Raj's unexpected frankness. Of the executive team, he was the one I'd worked with least directly, but he'd always been observant. He recognized a power shift when he saw one. Instead of responding to any of them, I got dressed and headed to the office. I had work to do before my conversation with Claude tomorrow, preparations that had nothing to do with saving the visionary tech deal. The office was quiet, just a few engineers in the back corner, working their usual hours. I settled at my desk and opened a document I'd started 6 months ago, but never had the courage to complete. A detailed record of every project I'd led, every system I'd built, every client I'd onboarded, and every presentation I'd created that others had delivered. For 3 years, I had told myself I was being a team player by not demanding credit. I'd convinced myself that recognition would come eventually if I just worked hard enough. But watching Mark, Ellen, and Raj squirm under Claude's questioning had awakened something in me. The pleasant, accommodating Nina who accepted crumbs of appreciation was gone. At noon, my desk phone rang, an internal call from Dina, our receptionist. "Nina, there's someone here to see you. A woman named Zoe Laurent says she's from Bertrand Investments." My heart jumped. "I'll be right out." In the reception area stood a sharply dressed woman about my age, with close-cropped hair and intelligent eyes. "Nina," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Zoe Laurent, Claude Bertrand's chief of staff. I hope you don't mind this unannounced visit." "Not at all," I replied, too surprised to say much else. "Would you like to talk in the conference room?" She glanced around the open office. "Actually, I was hoping you might join me for lunch. Claude sent me to convey some information he'd prefer to keep confidential for now." 20 minutes later, we were seated at a quiet corner table in an upscale bistro a few blocks from the office. "Claude was impressed by you," Zoe said after we'd ordered. "More specifically, he was intrigued by the discrepancy between your evident capabilities and your position at Visionary." I took a sip of water. It's not uncommon in startups. Everyone does a bit of everything. True, but not everyone builds entire operational systems while being excluded from key investor meetings. Zoe's directness was refreshing. "Claude has been doing this for 30 years. He can recognize when someone is being underutilized." She reached into her bag and slid a business card across the table. "He'd like to offer you a position at Bertrand Investments, leading our portfolio operations team. The role would involve working directly with our investment companies to implement exactly the kind of frameworks you've developed at Visionary." I stared at the card. "I don't understand. You're still considering investing in Visionary, aren't you?" Zoe's smile was diplomatic. "That conversation is ongoing. But regardless of that decision, Claude recognizes talent when he sees it. The offer stands independently." My mind raced. "What about tomorrow's call? Claude still wants to speak with me?" "Absolutely. But he wanted you to have this information beforehand, so you can make your own decisions about your future with complete information." She paused. "Your current CEO seems protective of his position. Claude thought you should know that your options extend beyond Visionary tech." The rest of lunch passed in a blur as Zoe outlined the details of the position. The salary, nearly triple what I was making. The equity package, the relocation assistance to Paris if I wanted it. By the time we finished dessert, my world had completely shifted on its axis. As we stood to leave, Zoe handed me another envelope. "One more thing. Claude wanted you to have this before your meeting tomorrow. It's information about Visionary's previous funding attempts that you may find illuminating." Back at the office, I locked myself in the small conference room and opened the envelope. Inside was a detailed report on Visionary Tech's fundraising history, including 3 previous attempts at Series B funding that Mark had never mentioned to the team. Each attempt had failed for the same reason. Investors didn't believe the leadership team had the operational capability to scale the business. Until Bertrand had seen my framework. My phone buzzed again. "Ellen, calling for the 5th time today." This time, I answered. "Nina, thank God. We've been trying to reach you all day," she said, voice tight with stress. "Mark wants to prep you for tomorrow's call with Bertrand. We need to make sure we're all aligned on messaging." "Actually, Ellen," I said, a strange calm settling over me. "I think I'll handle the call my own way. By the way, how was your tour of the Louvre this afternoon? I hear the Mona Lisa is smaller than most people expect." The silence on the other end was deafening. "How did you—" "I planned your trip, remember? Every detail, down to the museum tickets." I gathered the papers Zoe had given me. "I should go. I have a lot to prepare before tomorrow's call." "Nina, wait." I hung up, a smile spreading across my face as I imagined the panic in their hotel room right now. For 3 years, I'd been invisible, overlooked, taken for granted. But after tomorrow's call with Claude Bertrand, they would never make that mistake again. Neither would I. I slept surprisingly well that night. No tossing and turning, no anxiety dreams, just peaceful, deep sleep like I hadn't experienced in months. I woke before my alarm, made a strong cup of coffee, and dressed carefully in a navy blue blouse that always made me feel confident. Today wouldn't be about begging for recognition or proving my worth. Today would be about choices. Mine. For once, an hour before my scheduled call with Claude, my phone lit up with a text from Mark. Mark, just checking. You're prepared for the Bertrand call. Key talking points. 1. You're integral to our team. 2. Your role is evolving with the company's growth. 3. You're excited about the future direction. Stick to these points. Company's future depends on this. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and reviewed the documents Zoe had given me one more time. The evidence was clear. Visionary had been rejected by 3 major investors, specifically because they doubted the leadership team's ability to execute. One investor's internal memo was particularly damning. Impressive technology, but leadership lacks operational discipline. No clear scaling strategy. My framework, the one I'd developed nights and weekends, had been the missing piece, the piece that finally got Claude Bertrand interested. At exactly 9 a.m. New York time, 3 p.m. in Paris, my screen lit up with the incoming video call. I took a deep breath and clicked accept. Claude Bertrand appeared, alone this time, sitting in what looked like his private office rather than the hotel conference room. Nina, thank you for making time, he said, his expression warm but evaluating. I trust Zoe found you yesterday? She did, I replied. Thank you for sending her. He nodded. I've been in this business for 3 decades. I've learned to recognize when there's a disconnect between a company's presented face and its actual engine. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me, why have you stayed at Visionary for 3 years in a position so clearly beneath your capabilities? The question was direct, almost blunt, but his tone held genuine curiosity rather than judgment. I believed in what we were building, I said honestly, and I was promised growth, equity, advancement, recognition, the startup story. Ah, the startup story, Claude echoed with a small smile. Work impossible hours for insufficient compensation now, for the promise of wealth and recognition later. Sometimes that story comes true. Often, it does not. I'm realizing that now. Claude studied me for a moment. Zoe explained, our offer? She did. And your thoughts? I took a careful breath. It's extremely generous, and I'm honored. But before I make any decisions, I'd like to understand your intentions regarding Visionary. Claude sat back, looking pleased with the question. Direct. Good. The truth is, Visionary has a promising product, but concerning leadership. We've been hesitating for weeks, until we trace the operational framework to you. That framework demonstrates precisely the execution capability we've been looking for. He paused, tapping his fingers lightly on his desk. We have 3 options. 1. Invest in Visionary as currently structured, which I'm increasingly reluctant to do. 2. Invest with conditions, including leadership changes and operational restructuring. 3. Decline to invest in Visionary, but pursue other opportunities with key talent. He gave me a meaningful look. Including me, I said. Precisely. And if I were to accept your offer, then option 3 becomes more likely, though not guaranteed. Other factors are in play. I nodded, processing this. And if I stay with Visionary, then we would likely pursue option 2, with conditions that would significantly impact the current leadership structure. The implications were clear. Either way, Mark and the executive team were about to face consequences for sidelining me. The question was whether I wanted to be part of that reckoning or make a clean break. I appreciate your transparency, I said. If I may ask, why tell me all this? Why not just make your decision about Visionary without involving me in the process? Claude smiled fully now. Because in my experience, the people who build systems that work are the people worth investing in, regardless of their titles. I would rather align with you than with those who failed to recognize your value. He glanced at his watch. I have a final meeting with your executive team in 30 minutes. Is there anything you would like me to know before that conversation? I thought about the years of overlooked contributions, the nights and weekends sacrificed, the promises made and broken, but I also thought about the genuine pride I felt in what I'd built at Visionary. Just one thing, I said. Whatever happened here, the way I was treated, it wasn't about the work. I believe in what we built. The framework, the models, the client implementation strategies. They work. They deserve to be funded and scaled. Whether that happens with me or without me, with the current leadership or new leadership, those innovations deserve a chance. Claude nodded slowly. Integrity noted and respected. He paused. I'll be speaking with your team shortly. I imagine you'll be hearing from them afterward. Whatever you decide, Nina, remember this. Value recognized elsewhere is often the best negotiating strategy. After we ended the call, I sat still for several minutes, letting the possibilities settle around me. 3 years of giving everything to visionary, of believing we're all in this together, of accepting less than I was worth, and in a 20-minute conversation, Claude Bertrand had validated what I'd been trying not to admit to myself. I had outgrown my place at this company. My phone buzzed. A text from Ellen. Ellen, Bertrand just called. Emergency meeting with all of us in 20 minutes. What did you tell him? Before I could respond, another text came through, this time from Raj. Raj, whatever's about to happen, you earned it. Stand your ground. I put my phone down without answering either of them and turned to my computer. I opened a document and began typing my resignation letter, not because I was definitely leaving, but because I needed to know I could, that the option existed, that I wasn't trapped. An hour passed with no further messages. I tried to focus on regular work tasks, but my mind kept drifting to the hotel conference room in Paris, imagining the conversation happening between Claude and my team. Finally, my phone rang. Mark's number. Nina, he said when I answered, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. We need to talk about what just happened. I'm listening. Bertrand has conditionally approved our Series B funding, he said, sounding like each word cost him something. With requirements. What requirements? A long pause. Leadership changes, a new operational structure. Another pause. He wants you elevated to Chief Operations Officer, reporting directly to the board, with an equity package commensurate with founding team members. I said nothing, letting the silence stretch. Nina, I know I've not always recognized your contributions appropriately, Mark continued, his tone shifting to something approaching humility. That was a mistake, one I'd like to correct. By making me COO because an investor forced your hand? By acknowledging that you've been functioning at an executive level for over a year without the title or compensation? He sighed. Look, I won't pretend this is coming from pure enlightenment on my part. Bertrand made it clear. No restructuring, no investment. But that doesn't mean it isn't the right move for the company, for all of us. And what happens to the current leadership team? I remain CEO, but with a 6-month probationary period under board review. Ellen keeps her CMO role. Raj, he hesitated. Raj is returning to his previous company. Bertrand didn't think his technical leadership was strong enough. Poor Raj. Though of the 3 executives, he'd been the only one to recognize the shifting power dynamic and encourage me to use my leverage. When are you coming back from Paris? I asked. Tomorrow. Bertrand's legal team is drafting the term sheet now. We need to move quickly. He paused. Nina, I need to know if you're staying. If you'll accept the COO role. I'll let you know my decision when you return, I said. We should discuss this in person, don't you think? After hanging up, I opened my desk drawer and took out the small notebook where I'd been keeping track of my accomplishments, contributions, and ideas that had been claimed by others. For 3 years, it had been my private record, evidence I'd collected but never used, proof I'd gathered but never presented. I wouldn't need it anymore. Whatever I decided, that chapter was closed. The next morning, I arrived at the office early and set up the conference room. I arranged 3 folders on the table, one each for Mark, Ellen, and the board representative who would be joining by video. When they arrived, looking jet-lagged and apprehensive, I was already seated at the head of the table. Thank you all for coming, I began, as though I had always run these meetings. I've prepared documentation of the operational restructuring that would accompany my acceptance of the COO position. Mark and Ellen exchanged glances but said nothing as they took their seats. You'll find a detailed transition plan, reporting structure changes, and equity distribution requirements. I've also included development paths for key staff who have been similarly overlooked. I gestured to the folders. Everything is outlined clearly. Ellen opened her folder first, scanning the contents with widening eyes. This is comprehensive. I've had 3 years to think about what this company needs operationally, I said. The only difference is, now people are listening. Mark thumbed through his copy. And if we agree to these terms, then I accept the COO position and we move forward together. Visionary gets its funding, the product gets the support it needs to scale, and we all benefit. And if we don't agree? Ellen asked quietly. I smiled. Then I take Claude Bertrand's offer to join Bertrand Investments, where I'd be working with their portfolio companies to implement operational frameworks, including potentially oversight of whatever investment they ultimately make in Visionary. The room fell silent as the implication settled. You'd be our boss either way, Mark said finally, a note of resignation in his voice. Not your boss, I corrected. Your partner, which is all I ever wanted to be. 2 months later, I stood at the podium at our all-hands meeting, presenting the new operational structure that had already increased our efficiency by 32%. The Series B funding was secured, the team was expanding, and 3 other overlooked employees had been promoted to leadership roles based on merit rather than visibility. Mark had been surprisingly adaptable to the new power dynamic, Ellen less so. She'd submitted her resignation last week, unable to adjust to a world where she wasn't the only woman in the executive meetings. We'd hired a promising new CMO who understood that marketing claims needed to align with operational realities. As for Raj, Claude Bertrand had actually connected him with a smaller startup where his skills were a better fit. No hard feelings, just people finding where they belonged. After the presentation, I returned to my new office, still modest, but with a door and a window this time. On my desk sat a small package wrapped in elegant paper. The card read, "To partnerships based on recognized value, CB." Inside was a beautiful Mont Blanc pen and a note that simply said, "The best revenge is not just success, but success that transforms the landscape for everyone." He was right. My revenge hadn't been about watching Mark and Ellen squirm in that Paris hotel room, satisfying as that had been. The real revenge was creating a company where what happened to me couldn't happen to someone else, where value was recognized, contribution was rewarded, and we're all in this together wasn't just something we said, but something we lived. The company I'd always believed Visionary could be. Thanks for staying with me through this story. If it resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been in a situation where your contributions went unrecognized? How did you handle it? Sometimes standing up for yourself feels impossible until it becomes inevitable. I'd do it all again in a heartbeat, except maybe I wouldn't wait 3 years next time.